Welcome to membership management, setting up your membership category like a pro. First, I'd like to introduce myself. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Christine Bundy. I'm the Customer Success Manager here at Member 365. Fun fact is I love questions. So if at any time you have questions, please ask them. You can put them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen as we're going along. If it's something that I can quickly answer as I'm going, I will. Otherwise, there is a Q&A at the end, so don't worry. If you miss anything, it is being recorded, so you will get a copy of this at the end in the post email. It's also going to be posted on our YouTube channel for future reference. So what are we doing today? So today's session will be a little longer. So again, if you miss something or you have to go, don't worry. Today's session is being recorded. We're going to go through basic setup of memberships. Then we're going to go through the advanced settings. Then we're going to go through some best practices. And finally, we'll get to that Q&A. So again, any questions at any time? No question is a silly question. I love questions. Ask away as we go. All right. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump in to Member 365. Here we are in our webinar staging site. And the first thing that we're going to do from the main admin dashboard is go up to membership, and we're going to go to membership category setup. And so in the categories, we're going to go over to create a new membership category. So the first thing that we're going to do is give it a name. So I'm just going to call it associate, and I'm going to go next. Then you have three options. You have individual membership, so a person. You have an organization membership or group. So self-explanatory, so a company which has like a primary person with employees under them, or you can have a chapter. Now, chapter we can also relabel as family. So you do have the ability to switch that over depending on how you want to do. It is exactly the same functionality as organization. So it's having one primary with multiple employees or family members or chapter members. It's just then being relabeled to how you want it to appear. So for today, we're going to focus on individual. There is another webinar for organization that we'll do later on, but today we're going to focus on individual and go through all the settings. Then we have when you would like your members to renew. So is it going to be on an anniversary date? So the day they sign up is the day they renew every year. Is it annual, where everybody signs up at the same time of year? We typically see like December 31st, or the second season for renewals is normally July 31st. So depending on where you are, then we have lifetime members where they only pay once and there's no renewals. And then we have a term or monthly. So it could be on a monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, however you want to do it. If you're on like a 2-year term, you can set that up as well. For today, we're going to go on annual. And we're going to set it to be on December 31st. So we're going to go all the way to the end. Oh, and we're going to go 31st, and we're going to hit next. Then you set up your fee. So you can have no fee if you like, if this is like a free membership. I'm going to put in $100. And then you have your taxes. So for the taxes, it's up to your discretion. You can go based on location, your default tax or custom tax, depending on how you have that set up in your ledgers. Then I'm going to hit next. I'm going to say no tax for our purposes today. And then we're going to allow credit card and check. Again, depends on your settings and what you want to allow. When you go into the advanced settings is where you can accept cash or e-transfer. Then we can review. So this is just a basic wizard for a basic membership. You can see everything reviewed here. You can even get your link for testing. If you want, you then can go to your advanced settings. So we're going to go to advanced settings. And this is how you get here. Now, I'm actually going to move over to another membership category that I just set up. So I'm actually going to go back. So I just got a question, which I can answer now. So there is the, I did put December 31st, and that is the day that they end their membership. So the start date would be January 1st. So if January 1st is the start of the new year for them, and then they end on December 31st. So that's the day they have to renew by, otherwise they lapse as of the 1st. Okay, so now I'm going to go to associate individual membership. So this is the one I created earlier today. And By the way, if you have questions, keep them coming. I will try and answer them as I go. We also will have Q&A at the end. Okay, so the first thing here is your description. This wasn't in the basics. This is in the advanced settings. I really emphasize having a description for each of your categories. And the reason for this is it appears at the top of your membership application. And if you have multiples, it just emphasizes to the member which one they're on. So they're not like, oh, was I supposed to be associate, or was I supposed to be individual, or was I gold, or was I silver? It just kind of nails it in as to like, I'm on the right category. These are the things I'm supposed to be doing. So just make sure you have like a brief description here, even including some of the benefits is good as well. I also recommend you do this on the renewal application. We won't be going over renewals today. That is a separate webinar, and we do host that twice a year. But I do want to emphasize that that description can be very valuable. So make sure that you have something in there describing what it is, and maybe including some of the benefits as to why they're going to be in this membership category specifically. Now, we've already gone over types and the renewal dates, but I do definitely want to go over the approval process, because some people sometimes get a little confused with this. We are going to go through this in depth a little bit more next session. So in 2 weeks, we're going to go through how this works for the administrator. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So for the approval process, you can either have one just for the application, or you can have one also for renewals. So your collection, when you collect the money, you can either collect it on application. So that's the first option during application process, or after they've been approved. Typically, a lot of people like to do it on application. However, if you have very strict criteria and you don't want to have to worry about issuing refunds, or depending on your refund policy, you might want to do it after they're approved. So they get approved and then they pay and then they get access to the portal. Again, it's up to you, it's up to your policies, but the normal reason why people say after approval for payment is because they don't want to have to worry about issuing a refund, or they have restrictions and policies against refunding. Other times it's if they pay, they pay. Doesn't matter if they're rejected, they pay. Again, up to your group and how you want to present that. Then the next option is, when do you want to provide access to the portal? Is it upon approval, or is it upon approval and payment? Now, I always like to say upon approval and payment, especially if you're doing e-transfers or checks, because you want to make sure they pay before you grant them access. So it means that you can approve them, but they aren't going to get that welcome email and get access to the system until you get that check or e-transfer in your bank. So again, depends on how your policy. We will go into this a little bit more detailed and exactly how this works in our next session in 2 weeks. So stay tuned if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Then we have admin notifications. So this is really good for whoever the membership manager is. You can set this so it can be more than one person. So as you can see, I have 2 emails in here. All you have to do is add a comma and then put in the next email, and it will be sent to both individuals. And you can indicate if you just want to know if there's a new member or if there's a renewal. It's just an email notification so that you can click on it and be able to go in to make sure that you approve or go through the approve process. I do recommend this, especially if you have an approval process, so you know when to log in to go through that. All right. One thing I always like to say is always save as you go. I haven't made any changes, so I don't need to say, but if you are making changes while you're in here, save as you go so you don't lose anything. So the next tab we're going to go through is fees. So there are 5 fee types now. There's flat fee, which is a standard rate. One thing that I always like to emphasize, and your accountants may love you for this, so keep this in mind, is you can create ledgers for each of your categories. You can also create them for the different types. So you can have one ledger for new members and you can have a different ledger for renewals. This makes it very easy for your accountants to be able to know the difference between, was it a new applicant or a renewal, and where is the money coming from. Typically, we see an 80-20, so 80% renewals, 20% new members. But it's hard to track that if you don't change these ledgers. So something that you may want to do if you haven't done it already is create a ledger for new applications and create a ledger for renewals. Okay, so flat fee, one fee, everybody's the same. Category fee is when category fee is when you have ranges. So let's say that you are doing employees and you have employees from 0 to 10 is $100, and from 11 to 20 is $200, and so on and so forth. If it's based off employees and there's categories, that's when you can use this structure. Next is custom fees. So a couple associations do this when they have a whole bunch of criteria that they need to meet in order to get a certain amount. So let's say that, for example, they have to have like 3 children organizations or and so many employees, then you can do a custom fee for that, especially if they get like maybe a discount. So maybe they have like 30 employees and 2 child organizations, so they get 20% off for the 2 child organizations and another 10% off for having 30 employees. Then they get a discount rate, so then you can customize it. If it's just straightforward unit, like I have 30 employees, it's 30 employees plus $1 per employee equals $30. Then you can use unit pricing. Unit price is on a per unit basis. So if it's based on employees, say you have 500 employees, it's $1 per employee, it's $500. That's when you use unit pricing. Custom is when you have other criteria that are not just units. So like, let's say that there's that discount, that's when you would use custom. Finally, we have the organization pricing. So this is a new one. And what it does is it's based off of an organization's status. So even though an organization, it depends on what the organization status is. So it's for individuals only. So this does not work if you have an organization membership. This is only for individual memberships. So this is for when the organization is in a good status versus lapse status. So if they're active and they paid, you can have all the employees or related contacts attached to that organization have a specific fee and renewal fee. And if they're not in a good status, so if they are lapsed, then they get a different fee. So there are the different things that you can do depending on how this, but again, this is for individuals, not organizations, only individuals. It's attached to the organization, but only for individuals that are related. So if they aren't related to an organization, this does not apply. So just make sure that if this is something that you want to do, you want to make sure that you have organization as a mandatory field. So again, so we have flat fee, we have categories where they can group them. You have customized, whereas it's custom. So they go through the approval process based off of the criteria in that you then set a price and the invoice is sent off afterwards. And then we have the unit price. So it's based off of a question and it's on a per unit basis. Okay. Again, we will go through these a little bit more in the next one during the approval process to show you what the different stages, how it works for each of them. All right, so then you have the option to have a late fee. So if they are paying past the application or renewal day, what does that look like? You can have it set also a ledger specific for this. So again, this is something great for your accountants. One thing with these ledgers is you can't change them at any time. I recommend changing them just before renewal season when you're doing your big push, your membership push. But you can adjust them at any time. Just make sure that you don't do it in the middle of renewals. Maybe wait before or after before you make any updates to them. So you can set how many days after lapse is there a late fee for. So this is only for renewals, by the way. This is not for new applicants, only for renewals. Is there a late fees? Okay, then we have the calendar and the extension. So one thing I always want to mention, use one, not both. You either use the fee calendar or the extension. And this is only for annual memberships. This is not for anniversary. This is only for annual memberships. So the first one here is the calendar. So I already have this one set up. So I had December 31st as my renewal date. So what I did and what we typically see in this industry with a lot of associations is that the 2 months that you're in your renewal season, if anyone applies within that, you can have people pay the full pop and then extend it for the next year. So that's what I have set up here. You don't have to do this. You can just make them, they have to pay the full pop no matter what. Or you could use one of our prorations, which I'll get to in a minute. But again, use one of these options. You do not use all of these options. You pick one. So however you want it to be set up, you just have to make sure that you understand which one you want to use. If you need help, please ask us. We are here to help to make sure you set it up correctly. So for the calendar, the first thing that I did is I came in here and I hit create calendar. When I did that, I get this pop-up and I can then select from these different options. So I can select collect a full membership fee. I can reduce by percentage or by a dollar amount, or I can pay the full fee and extend the membership for the next year. So that's what I did for the December. So all from December 1st to December 31st, they are going to pay the full pop and then get the next year, which is the extension. Then between January and October, they pay the full pop and then they have to renew. And then if a new applicant comes in November, they have the ability to extension. So they pay for the full year, but they do not have to renew again in December. They get extended to the next year. Again, depends on your policies and how you want to do that, but this is how you would set it up for those members. If you want to have that kind of grace period for new applicants, so they don't have to renew right away. Some people have a policy, they pay between that time, they got to renew right away, and that's fine. Just want to provide you with all the options. Then you have your extension. So this is if you have the renewal date in the middle of the month or at the end of the month. So for example, we had it on December 31st. So this would be applicable to us. If I had the renewal date on January 1st, extension would not apply because it would only extend the application, the renewal date, if I had the renewal in that time frame. So if the user applies to a membership, a brand new user, during the same month as the renewal date, it's extended for the next year. So if somebody renewed within December, from December 1st to the 31st, it would extend for the next year. So maybe you don't want to extend it for 2 months, but you just want to extend it for the month in which they renew. That's when you would use extension. But again, if I had this set for January 1st, this would not apply and I'd have to use a calendar. Then we have your proration. So here is where you either have no proration. Again, you either use proration, extension, or calendar. You do not use all. And I'm going to emphasize that lots during this video because it's a common mistake where someone selects multiples and then it doesn't work. So the first option is forward. And it's kind of straightforward on here where it says like on registration, members pay the remainder of the fee for the current year as well as the full amount for the next year. So this could also apply if you wanted. So if they apply within those 2 months, they have to pay the remainder of the year and then the full amount, and then they go into the next year's cycle. Backwards is where the registrant will only pay the fee adjusted for the remainder months and no further charges will be made. So they're just paid for the remainder and then they have to renew. Then you have extended, so where they will pay for the remainder of the year, adjusted remainder of the year, and will pay the full amount for next year. So those are the proration options. Then we come down to payment options. So these are the different ones. So, and these we also can change. So like if you don't want to have check, but you want to have cash and e-transfer, we can adjust that. It's in your financial settings. You can adjust that at any time. So you can select all of them. One of them depends on your policies. You can even set limits for credit cards. You need to make sure that you have a credit card selected, payment gateway. So we have Bambora. And then you do have the ability to have automated recurring billing. Now, I always recommend that if you are doing annual memberships and only annual memberships, that you can turn this on. You don't have to force it. There is an option to force if you wish. The members can opt out in the member portal, but I always like to turn this on because people then click it and then they're just renewing automatically, and it just makes it easier for them. It makes it easier for you because you're getting that automatic payment. Then we have our sales tax. So this we kind of went over earlier. Sales tax is set up in the financials, and then you can just select the options that you need. Again, Save as you go. So as you're making updates, make sure you're saving as you go through. So next is the application form. So these are all the contact details that are going to be asked during the application and the renewals. So make sure you keep that in mind. So it's both. You can set these as mandatory, although first name, last name, email address are mandatory. Email address is the primary identifier in our system. Everyone has to have a unique email address. So that is automatically here, but all these other ones you can turn on. I always recommend turning on organization, and I always recommend turning on the drop down. The drop down will show all the organizations in your database and then allow them to select one. If it's not in your database, you can also check this often. Can I add an organization, so that if it's not in that option, they can add it. This prevents duplicates. So many times I get clients coming to me like, how do I prevent duplicates? This is how. And people spell organizations 5 different ways. I didn't realize this, but member 365 can be spelled 10 different ways. It's member space 365 or member 365 or lowercase member 365 versus uppercase. Every character difference creates another organization record, which then you have to clean up. So this helps prevent it. And this is also in the event system. So whenever somebody is inputting information, it's available for you. So all these you can determine. If you have taxes, by the way, if you are charging taxes, you do at least have to have one address. So keep that in mind. So either business or residential. So one of them has to be mandatory. If you're not doing taxes, it's not mandatory, but just something to keep in mind. So if you are going to charge tax, make sure you consider which one you want to keep, or are you having one in your directory, because that can determine which one you want as made mandatory. So if you're definitely doing organization directory, make business address a mandatory field for you. Next, we have secondary contact. So secondary contact is when you have maybe an assistant, or for some organizations, it's a spouse. I know I'm the secondary contact for my spouse. He is not very computer literate. He will be the first to admit that. So whenever he does anything, it goes to my email so I can help him out with it. So instead of that, you can have this turned on where they get copied on everything that the primary does to help them out. So they can log in and do things on behalf of the primary. This is only for individual memberships. We do have role management for organizations where we have secondary contacts, but they have their own login. So this is strictly for individual memberships where you may want to allow someone to add somebody else to help on their behalf. So if you have maybe like an older generation that maybe wants to put like a daughter or son as a secondary contact to help them out, that might be an option. Or if you have like a spouse, that might be an option too. Then we have our field questions or custom questions. So there are 2 forms that you can attach to a membership application. There are the membership questions, and these are only questions that are mandatory for becoming a member. So I always say that these are the questions that you absolutely need to know to approve a membership. However, if you have a directory, if your organization is creating a directory and you want any questions to appear as filters in the directory or appear on the contact or members directory square in there, you want to have a directory form. And that might mean moving some of the application form questions to the directory. They will still be visible during the approval process because we have the membership form and then the directory form on the approval page. But it just depends on where, because you don't want to have it twice. You don't want to have it asked twice, but it goes to different locations. So just make sure you keep that in mind when you're creating forms. Should it be a question for approval and it's not going to go on the directory, or is it a directory question because you want it available in the directory, but I still also need it to know it for approval? So if you have any confusion about this, if you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to ask. But it is something that I always find that some people have a little bit of confusion with. So I always like to clarify that there are 2 forms. One is for directory, one is for the membership strictly for approvals, or maybe uploading files that they need to provide to be approved. That's when you would use the membership form. When it's something like categories or what their specialty is or anything along those lines, that's what I would put in like the directory. and then attach it to the application form. Finally, there are disclaimers. So we already asked for the code of conduct and make sure we can send your email. Those are automatic, but anything above and beyond that. So do you want to put disclaimers about photos? Do you want to put disclaimers about the portal? Anything along those lines you can add here. I am not a lawyer. I cannot tell you what you should or should not put. It's up to you. I recommend you consult a lawyer. If you are going to put any disclaimers in here, it is completely your choice, but that's just another option for you. Okay, again, save as you go. All right, so I am not going to go through renewals. Again, that is a separate webinar. We have it already in our knowledge base. We are going to be hosting another one in a couple months for renewals coming up in the summer. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask, but we will cover this again in another session. So I'm going to go to automated emails. These are the emails. So now that I have all the approval processes turned on, this changes depending on what approval processes I have turned on, but these are the emails that will automatically be available. So submission confirmation, the approval, denial, and the pre-approved. So you can come in and adjust these as needed. You can update these so that they will be standard for everyone in this category. They are specific per category. So just because I update it here, it doesn't update it for another category. They're per category basis. It's so you can customize them for this category to give a specific message that might be different from another one. Then we have the approval process for your renewals, because I had that enabled. This is the default renewal reminder. So I will just go over this part for renewals is if I update this and I add another renewal reminder, this is the default it will be taking from. So if every year you have to adjust your renewal reminders, you can just update this one, remove them all, and then re-add them and put them in the correct sequence that you want to. And then finally, we have our welcome email. So this is the email that new applicants receive. If you are launching your platform, this is also the message that they will receive. So make sure that you go in here and you update accordingly for what you need it to do. Oh, one thing that I always want to make sure that you have in here too is this section. So you always want to make sure that you have the URL and you have the username and password. That is mandatory. Everything else you can change, but this needs to be in there so that your members get their login credentials. If you do not want a portal, if you're not using the member portal, you're strictly using anything else, then you can just remove this and just have it as a confirmation like they've applied. So that's when you would remove this, but otherwise make sure it's in there or they will not get their login credentials, because once this is sent out, you only can resend it. You'd have to then reset passwords and send them the login and all that other stuff. So just make sure it's in there when you're doing, we always check, but something to make sure when you update. The next option is continuing education. So I'm not going to go into big details. I'm just going to explain a little bit of what this is. There is a separate webinar for continuing education where we go through the setup for this. But mainly continuing education is if you have certifications that require your members to acquire a fixed number of credits or hours in order to be certified to renew their membership. So this is if you are doing certification maybe for nurses or for lawyers or clerks or even in the trades, that they have to go take so many courses or watch so many videos or do so many in-person activities. You have the ability to track them within the system. Next, you can also attach a fundraiser to your application. So if you are doing donations of any kind, you have to create the fundraiser first, and then you would come in here, be able to select the one that you want to do. And then you would just simply indicate when you want it to be collected. Is it on application and on renewals? It is an option. It is not mandatory. It's just like, hey, would you like to do this? Since you're already paying us for this, would you like to donate? They can. It's, again, completely up to you if you want to do that, or if you just want to strictly have it in the member portal. I always like to have it in here. Why not? It's just an ask. They can always say no and move on. Then we have our final settings. So we have badges. So these badges are what appears in the member portal. So I do recommend having a badge because if they have multiple memberships, because our system does allow you to have more than one membership. So you could have an individual membership, and then you could also be the primary for your organization membership. Or you could be a sponsor and a member. Anything along those lines, you definitely would like to have a badge because then it's easy for them to distinguish. between the difference. It also makes the portal look really pretty. And again, I'll show this in our next session when we go through the application testing and all that fun stuff. You can also do add-ons. So creating add-ons is if it's anything above and beyond the membership category. So you just add a name, description, what category it falls into, and then also, is it a mandatory or is it from your store? Like, do you have a store product that you would like to add in here? You could, so I could select one of these, maybe a Blue Hat or Community Online, and then I could simply just create my category. So I could just say that this is for a hat, Blue Hat. And I could say this is a Blue Hat swag. Accessories. Successfully added. And away you go. You can also add a certificate. If you are doing certificates, I highly recommend it. You create those up in modules. You can go up to modules and create a certificate. It's great for presenting. So instead of having to mail out certificates, they get it directly in the member portal at any time that they have an active membership. So something to consider. Then you also have the ability to show or not show the benefit module if you so wish to. So the benefit module is what appears in the member portal. So can the members in this category post in that? Do you want them to be able to post, or is it strictly no, they can just see what's going on, not be able to post anything in there? Typically, most people just have the admin posting, but again, it's up to you. You can adjust the confirmation email message at the end. You can add to it. You can archive the membership category as a whole. So everybody will become archived automatically. And then you can also have status badges. So status badges appear for members to be able to put on their website. So if you certify individuals that are inspectors or their private practice, so professional organizers, if there's a certification professional organizers, you can have a badge that they can embed onto their public website to say that they're certified. So again, this kind of coincides with the CE program, but it is an option that is available. And then finally, the last option is getting your application link. And this is what you're going to use for testing. So this is what we're going to use for next week or 2 weeks from now. So that is the end of the advanced settings. And so let's go back to the slides and we're going to go through some of the best practices. So again, if you have any questions, please jump them. Put them in the questionnaire and we'll go through them in a couple of minutes. So the first best practice is to clearly describe your membership category. So as I said in the description at the top, also do this for the renewals, is have a clear description as to what that category is, what it means, what the benefits are, so that when they click on it, they know exactly which one they're clicking on. I also recommend you do this on the membership page that they're registering from. Again, just it's not a have to, just recommendation. Next, and we'll go through this one in more detail in 2 weeks, is make sure that you test and understand your approval process. One of the most common things that we see is people set up the approval process and then they don't understand quite what's going on. If you need help, ask us. Love to help you. I love going through memberships and events with people. So don't hesitate to ask if you do need help. Also use ARB if you have a flat fee. Oh yeah, so you can't use ARB if you have anything other than flat fee, because they have to then select the different criteria during the renewal process or the approval process. So just make sure that you only have ARB enabled for flat fee, which we had on this category. If you're using any of the others, I don't recommend, or I would not have ARB turned on, because you have to, it might change. So every time they renew, they might change categories, they might change their units, they might change organization, things along those lines. So it's only if you have a flat fee attached that you can use the ARB. So keep that in mind. For annual memberships, make sure you're only using one of the proration options. So you're using the calendar or using the extension. Don't Don't use both, only one, or they'll cancel each other out and it won't work. All right, questions, my favorite part. So I already answered one as we were going. Here's another one. I assume that you can go back and change later. I'm assuming that you're talking about the ledgers. Yes, so the ledgers, you can change at any time. So again, don't change them in the middle of renewal season, or make sure you wait, or do it just at the beginning before those renewal reminders go out. That's kind of the best time to do it. I know some people that change it every year. So they have like a 2002 renewal season one, they have a 2023 renewal season ledger, and every year they make a new one. It's up to you and how detailed you want to go and what your accountant wants. Just, I always recommend consulting them, because I know they like, the more details they get, the better. It's easier for them to track. It's easier for you to track if you're the one doing it. So just something to keep in mind. When you are changing the ledgers, it is under charter accounts. So that is a question. The chart accounts you can change anytime. You can add to them. There are custom ones, then you can add to them. I also recommend that if you are doing it in your memberships, you can also do it for your events. So you can get really detailed in the memberships. You can do by like a ledger for each category, for new members and for renewals. And then you can actually break down the pricing very accurately as to how much I'm making for my individual members versus my organization members, and how much I'm making on my new applicants versus my renewals. And then you can kind of target where I should be focusing my time. Should I be focusing on retaining my members, or should I be focusing my time on my new members and getting them onboarded? Any other questions? Okay, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We have lots of resources available for you. We have our educational videos, knowledge base. You can always submit a ticket if you have questions at any time. If you have premium support, or you are a legacy client, where you can do Zooms and chats, you can always schedule a call. If you have premium, you can schedule a Zoom call with one of our success team members. More than happy to get on a call with anyone to discuss their memberships, getting them up to speed. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter. So every month we put out a blog and tell you about all the webinars that are coming up and give you some tips. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope today was helpful, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the second session on membership management, communications and reporting.